Hi, and welcome to our preview review of Lesson 3 of Alpha to Omega, where we start to work with verbs, and in particular with omega verbs. That is the simplest, most regular kind of verb, and that's what we're going to be working with for quite a few lessons here. So, first, if you've ever learned a Romance language or Latin in the classroom, you are familiar with this sort of chart. And this is what our verb charts are going to, generally speaking, look like. So in the columns, we have, we have singular and plural. So verbs with a singular subject here, verbs with a plural subject there. Call that number, the singular number, the plural number of the verb. And then look at the rows, first person subjects, second person subjects, third person subjects. So the first person singular subject, I, the first person plural, we, second person singular, you singular, second person plural, y'all. Then third person singular, he or she or it or any other singular noun that we're talking about. Third person plural, they or any other plural noun that we're talking about. Okay, so this is what our verb charts are generally going to look like. So let's take a look at one now. All right, so this is the chart of the present indicative active of paideo, which is the verb that we're going to use as our example verb. Paideo means to teach. So here's the stem, paideo, throughout the chart. So that's the stem. And then look at the endings. So we have different endings for the first, second, and third person, singular and plural. So by looking at a Greek verb, looking at its ending, you can tell what the subject is. So, paideo, I teach, paideoes, you teach, paideoe, he teaches or she teaches or it teaches or the dog teaches, paideomen, we teach, paideoete, y'all teach, paideusen, they teach, the dogs teach. Now, I translated these as I teach, you teach, but we could also translate these I am teaching, you are teaching, he is teaching, we are teaching, y'all are teaching, they are teaching. Greek does not have in the present indicative, Greek doesn't have separate forms for those. So whichever sounds better in English, I teach or I am teaching, you teach or you are teaching. Use whichever sounds better to you in English. So let's talk a little bit about what it means when we say this is the present indicative active of paideo. Well, this is present tense, indicative, so that means it's happening now. Indicative mood, we'll talk a little bit more about mood later, and active voice. Everything that we're doing for quite a while now is going to be active voice. That means that the subject of the verb, whether it's I or you or he or y'all, the subject of the verb is doing the action of the verb. Okay, so present tense, indicative mood, active voice. We'll talk for just a second about the accent that's moving around some here on these verbs. Verbs in general almost always have recessive accent. That means that the accent goes as far back as it can on the word according to the rules of accent. So we're going to start looking at the rules of accent here. So let's look at this first form, paideo, I am teaching or I teach. Let's look at the last syllable. The last syllable of a word is called the ultima. Right? So look at the ultima and decide whether it is long or short. So the way you can tell if a syllable is long or short, long syllables contain a long vowel, that is to say a long alpha an eta, a long iota, an omega, or an upsilon. Or they contain a diphthong, two vowels pronounced as the same syllable, two vowels together. So if we look at paideo, the first person singular, I teach, it ends in omega. That's a long vowel, right? So this is a long syllable. So the ultima is long. That means the accent can only go back one more syllable to the penult. Okay, so there's the penult right there. O. That is itself a diphthong. O. When you put an accent over a diphthong, it goes over the second vowel of the diphthong. So let's look at the next form. Padeoes, you are teaching or you teach. Look at that last syllable. Ace. Well, look, it's got a diphthong in it. So that's a long syllable too. So again, the accent's only going to go back to the penult. Same for padewe, he is teaching or he teaches. There's the ultimate A, that's a diphthong. So it's going to go back to the penult. Now let's look at the first person plural, padeomen. Well, now here the ultima has an epsilon in it. That's short. It's not a long syllable. So this time the accent can go back not just to the penult, but to the antepenult, the third to last syllable. So the three last syllables of a word have names. The ultima is the last syllable, the penult is the next to last syllable, and the antepenult is the third to last syllable. So if the ultima is short, the accent can go back all the way to the antepenult. So look at paidewate, y'all are teaching. The ultima is short, so we can go back to the antepenult. And finally, paideusen. So there's the last syllable there. It's got that short iota in it. So the accent is going to go back to the antepenult. One more thing that I'm going to talk about here. See this nu here? That's called a movable nu. And that movable nu is there it'll be there if the next word begins with a vowel. So it's to protect that iota from a vowel that begins the next word, if the next word begins a vowel. Greek does not like hiatus. Greek does not like it when one word ends in a vowel and then the next word begins with a vowel. Greek doesn't like that. And so it prevents it by putting this nu movable in there if the next word begins with a vowel. We'll also use the nu movable at the end of a sentence. Okay, it's like in English, we say like a banana, but an orange, because we want to prevent hiatus by putting this N in there. Okay? All right, so that was the present indicative active. Let's look at the present infinitive active. So there's that same stem, paideo, with the present infinitive active ending ain, paideoin. And we're going to translate that to be teaching. You'll remember for the present indicative active, I said you could translate it I teach or I am teaching, simple aspect or progressive aspect. The present infinitive always has progressive aspect. We'll use a different form for simple aspect. So you're always going to translate a present infinitive to be blanking. Okay, so the present infinitive active, to be teaching. And now the present imperative active. So this is present tense, imperative mood, and again, active voice. So if the indicative mood is just for statements of, fact, the imperative mood is for commands. So these are command forms. There isn't a first person singular or plural, but here's the second person singular, paidewe, which is, and I have a couple of mistakes here, so let me get rid of those. There we go. All right, so paidewe is the second person singular, and it means, hey, you, singular person, be teaching, which sounds crazy, I know. And again, these always have present imperatives, always have this progressive aspect. It's about continuing action. So be teaching in the plural, padewata. Hey, y'all, be teaching. Now, in the third person, we don't have a third person imperative in English. So we have to think of a roundabout way of doing it. And the way we generally do it is with let. So Paideweto, let her or him or it or the dog be teaching. And Paidewanton, let them be teaching. Okay? And that is the imperative mood.